Oh, can we also do an email chain quickly? And if you've already done it, can you just add me? I'll add my email to the chat.
Also, I think I missed it. Is AF going second or first? Second?
Yeah, Af's going second, Neg's going first. Sorry.
And what team is AF?
GL is F.
Okay, cool.
I sent the email.
Oh wait, I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick.
Are we waiting on anything?
I think my partner, oh wait, he's back. I don't think so.
Let's go for it then.
I'm good for now, y'all.
Has the email chain been started?
Yeah, Jens, I sent it to you.
Oh, you did?
Jens?
Oh, I got it.
Meeting Gate contention one is a Trump win. Trump won't be reelected. Scully 20 reports that Biden has a massive lead over Trump in national polls and is set up to beat Trump in the 2020 election. Jaff 20 explains that Medicare for All decks the Democratic strategy for 2020, which is to attack Republicans on healthcare. Jaff continues that Democratic attack ads on healthcare are also critical in congressional down-ballot races. Democrats lose a major rallying cry, losing turnout. Shahar 16 explains that low voter turnout was the major reason Democrats lost in 2016. The impact is climate change. Light 17 explains that Trump's low prioritization of controlling fossil fuels and refusal to pull out of the Paris Agreement means that we could pass the tipping point on climate change during his term in office. That's bad, as Solid 17 explains that the Paris Agreement was our best shot to reverse climate change, and Prophetic tells you that 0.5 degree increase in temperature kills 150 million people. Contention 2 is the majority world. The U.S. is the sole industrialized country not to impose pharmaceutical price controls. However, Conover 17 notes that a single-payer system like Medicare for All would enable the government to regulate drug prices, causing pharma companies to lose profit and cut R&D spending by a third. Unfortunately, reductions in profit translate to less access to the majority world. As Taylor 10 confirms, pharma companies are willing to partner with governments and NGOs to make their medicine more affordable to majority nations solely due to high U.S. profits. Taylor furthers that pharma companies have already provided $9.5 billion worth of aid and supported 1 billion people by launching projects to fight diseases like malaria and tuberculosis. However, price controls would restrict drug launches worldwide, preventing treatments from reaching those in need. This occurs for two reasons. First is by biasing markets. Kyle of MIT explains that companies would receive less U.S. revenue, disincentivizing them from launching drugs worldwide, resulting in fewer cures for majority countries. He concludes that price controls would reduce drug launches by 75%. Second is by ending price concessions. Mello 18 writes that currently pharma companies can grant pricing concessions where they charge less to majority countries. However, she notes that price controls will curb these low prices, hurting affordability in the states that need them most. Schwartz 11 confirms that primarily due to high U.S. prices, majority nations pay just 6% of what industrial countries pay for essential drugs. Overall, for these two reasons, Dazan 19 writes that our companies see the most launches and shortest delays for new medicines, allowing U.S. companies to assist majority nations. He concludes by lowering prices to the majority world, access to pharmaceuticals has risen by nearly 700%. The impact is crushing the majority world. In the majority world, medicine expenditures take up the bulk of healthcare expenses, as Duke quantifies that 90% of drug costs are out of pocket. Thus, Scholar 19 writes that companies commit to improving drug access in the majority world. These medicines save 3 million lives annually. Contention 3 shortages. By setting price controls on brand name drug companies, Medicare for All would also set price controls on generic companies. Because generic drug companies need to undercut brand name drug prices to stay competitive, Horatio 18 explains that price controls would make profit margins for generic drug companies basically negligible. These extremely thin profit margins make it financially unviable for any generic company to operate. Thus, Sullivan continues that Medicare's tight price controls would induce numerous drug companies to exit the market. This would be a disaster, as Weingarten 17 explains that generic drug manufacturers account for 90% of America's drug supply. A generic market exit would create huge drug shortage problems. The impact is a global collapse of drug access. As globalization has increased, supply chains for pharmaceuticals are growing increasingly interconnected. Unfortunately, COVID-18 of access to medicine finds the patchy and complex nature of global drug supply chains make them particularly vulnerable to disruption. Due to the small number of competitors at each stage of the supply chain, Narwa 18 of the verdict explains that failures or market exit from a major component can cause the entire chain to collapse. Worryingly, O'Leary 20 of the Atlantic finds that strain from COVID-19 has pushed pharmaceutical supply chains to the brink, making them more vulnerable than ever. A market failure in the US could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, collapsing access to drugs all around the world. This would be a catastrophe, as Snyder 19 of CFR finds that antibiotics have led to astronomical declines in deaths from lethal diseases, and access to antibiotics continue to save tens of millions of lives worldwide each year. Thus, we engage.
Can we see there are going to be price controls on generics?
They're sending their case, Jen.
Oh, that's a thing. Okay, then I can just read case.
Wait, Danny, are you sending it?
Oh, should I send it?
I'll send it then.
Okay.
Can you paste all the contention 2 cards in?
Yeah.
Danny, it's the doc we used last round.
Our C2? No, wait. I got the C2 cards, but they're not in the doc from last round.
Can you paste them in the doc from last round?
Oh, yeah. Where's the doc from last round?
It's called neg case cards. You know, I'll just send the link and then he can edit
Oh,
the
yeah,
doc.
and I'll just paste it in. That's cool.
Yeah.
RM hedge.
Yes.
Organization.
Y'all, this
Yeah.
hurts.
Yeah, I know. Our contention 2 cards aren't there yet, and hopefully they're going to be there soon when he pastes them
This is
in.
what happens when your disclosure doc has 10 arguments on each side.
Danny, do you have
Yeah.
the cards?
Yeah, I have them. Okay, I just got the email. Cool.
Danny,
What? Bro, I'm pasting the cards in right now. Okay, I pasted them in.
you did not paste them in.
Bro, they're at the top.
At the top?
Yeah. It goes
What
C2,
doc are you
C2.
in?
The one you just sent.
Okay, now I'm going to start running prep
Okay, you know
for
what?
you because this is ridiculous.
Wait,
You know what?
Jonesy, they're in there. It's the doc that there are 3 people on. Neg case cards. The one you just
Okay,
sent.
now I see them. Now I see them. We can
Just let-
start. Yeah,
yeah.
we're
All the cards are in there. Wait, are we waiting for something?
Just tell me when I'm good to go and when it's sent.
Oh, it's
it's already been sent.
Okay.
All right, mark it down. Neg is down 20 seconds of prep.
okay.
We affirm contention 1 is innovation. Although the US is a global leader in pharmaceutical innovation for decades, PwC in 2020 finds the broken healthcare system has driven innovation down. Indeed, like quantifies only 11% of new drugs provide a significant clinical improvement over existing ones, while the remaining 89% include what are called Me Too drugs, clones of existing drugs marketed as the latest breakthrough. GIDF corroborates that 80% of R&D spending is wasted on Me Too drugs. Luckily, with Medicare for All, the government have the ability to negotiate drug prices with pharmaceutical companies. Section 614 of the bill itself indicates that it would take into account comparative clinical effectiveness. GIDF explains this system, also called value-based pricing, would relate the purchase price of drugs to their incremental clinical and therapeutic value to patients. The more innovative a drug is, the more the pharmaceutical company is paid. For example, Germany has been curbing price growth by rewarding companies for innovative drugs, increasing innovation and access, as cost-90 quantifies and manufacturers were 10 times more likely to withdraw products that lacked added clinical benefits. Indeed, no innovative drugs left the market. Overall, World Pharma from 2020 reports that European markets, the majority of which utilize value-based pricing, saw record-breaking increases after implementing the system in innovation and are closing in on the stagnating US growth. The impact is lives. Hansman 15 quantifies that with innovative drugs, 10 million people will be saved every year until 2035. Contention 2 is the economy. An overhaul of the healthcare industry would transform the economy. Samuel 16 reports that US economic growth has slowed dramatically in the past decade. Fortunately, Friedman finds that enacting Medicare for All would not only save the US government billions from an administrative and monopolization costs, but it would redistribute money. Affirming specifically accomplishes this in 3 ways. The first is freeing up cash. Bloom 17 reports that average healthcare spending per person is projected to be $15,000 in 2023, because Cooper 20 finds that a Medicare for All program, which would have no premiums, no deductibles, and almost no copays, Benjamin 19 finds that 90% of households would save money. Indeed, Rowan 90 quantifies that for the average middle-class family, Medicare for All would save them $4,400 every single year, and Featherstone 90 quantifies that the poor will save 29% more money. Overall, Featherstone confirms that Medicare for All will reduce poverty in America by 20%. Thompson 16 concludes that middle and lower income Americans almost always spend their money back into the economy. The second is wages. Frac 20 corroborates that 157 million Americans get health insurance through their work. Fortunately, Bivens 20 finds that Medicare for All would provide a boost to wages by allowing employers to redirect healthcare spending to workers' wages. He finds that employers typically use health benefits to incentivize prospective employees. Under an affirmative world, they would need to incentivize workers through increases in wages. Stone confirms that every $1 decrease in health benefits leads to an 83% increase in wages. The third is entrepreneurship. Bivens finds that entrepreneurship is low in the US relative to other developed nations. Affirming solves back for this, as Dunkelberg 16 finds the most severe problem facing small businesses is a rising cost of health insurance. He finds over the past 15 years, small businesses have paid more for less when it comes to health insurance plans, constraining their budgets. Indeed, Samuels writes that the lack of innovation is one of the main causes of slowing economic growth, including that increasing small businesses would change this because it produces more innovation than large corporations. Indeed, Brown 18 continues that small businesses bring jobs to local economies and stimulates local growth, which, like COVID-19 quantifies as small businesses create 2/3 of new jobs and 44% of US economic growth. For these three reasons, enacting Medicare for All would increase economic growth as the White House quantifies the decreasing healthcare costs by 1.5%, increases GDP by 8% over the next decade. The impacts are twofold. The first is poverty in America. Bergman 18 reports that a 1% increase in economic growth is associated with a 1% decrease in poverty due to an increase in industrialization, which leads to an increase in wages. The second is global spillovers. Due to linkage through trade, Cozy 70 quantifies that a 1% increase in US growth boosts growth in advanced economies by 0.8% and in emerging economies by 0.6%, decreasing poverty abroad. Critically, Gregory 15 finds that growth in developing countries has lifted 280 million people out of poverty since 2000.
Before cross, so I was checking in your card doc. I just want to see if I'm missing it. Where is the card that says that because of less revenue, R&D goes down, or not R&D, drugs go down by 75%? It's in your first link on C2.
Let me see.
Sorry, what'd you say?
I'm checking.
Oh, okay, thank you.
What's the card called?
I unfortunately did not catch the author name, but
Okay.
it was like, I think the only card that was read on the first link.
I think just search Kyle in the doc.
KYLE?
Yeah, KYLE.
Alright. Okay. Where does it say 75%?
I think you have to look at the numbers, like the specific number of drugs released.
Okay. I can pull out.
With me, but I don't see any numbers in the card.
Yeah, there are no numbers here at all.
We can start cross if you want, but
Yeah,
like
I'll check the research thing to see.
Alright. You guys can start cross in the meantime. It's fine.
Danny, you can have the first question.
Okay. So specifically, like on wages growing, aren't employers pretty greedy?
What is the point of asking this question? That doesn't interact with the incentive structure that we give you in case.
Oh, so what's the incentive structure in case?
Okay, so right now, companies are using health benefits to incentivize workers to join their company. But when everyone has health benefits, companies need to increase wages in order to incentivize workers to again join their company. But can I have a question?
Wait, okay, can I get a quick follow-up on that?
Sure.
Okay, so specifically on the incentive structure of companies themselves, why do they prioritize getting more employees over, like, let's say getting stock buybacks or increasing like the revenue of their company?
Okay, so it doesn't matter if their company grows if there are no workers to actually help that company grow.
So
So
wait,
when
so like without,
they obviously need more workers, right? Because there's an increase in productivity. So they need more workers to join their company in order to keep up with any sort of increase in revenue they have. But can I have a question?
of course.
Okay, so what incentive do companies have in the status quo to give price concessions?
Like what incentive they have right now? Because like they're already generating a lot of revenue, and they know that like comparatively the price to GDP or like GDP per capita in developing countries is low. So the only way they can actually like give them these, like get them access or get them to buy them is by having pretty low prices.
Like, why do they want to do this? Are they just like, oh, I'm like the best company in the world, I'm so kind, I'm going to give drugs to everyone? Or is there another reason?
I mean, they're pretty kind, but also just like they can sell more, I guess. Could I get a question?
Okay, so they're kind and they can sell more. That's your answer to my question.
I mean, sure. Can I get a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so specifically on Me Too drugs, like what does the process of developing a Me Too drug look like?
Well, you probably look at the formula of how drugs are created, like the biological chemical components, and then you alter it a little bit, but you barely alter it, but it's technically a different drug.
Is that how they really produce it?
Danny, I'm sure you have the very detailed scientific explanation for how this occurs, but is there
Oh, no, dude, no, I'm not a scientist. I don't know any scientific explanation, but like from the way I see it, they just like make a bunch of batches of like pretty similar chemical compound things. And whichever works, and the others are Me Too's. It's like, wouldn't they be doing this innovation regardless? It's just more efficient, right?
I mean, I think that doesn't really make a lot of sense, because if you're only making one batch, then this Me Too drug literally exists for like a month. But that's just not how Me Too drugs work.
Wait, no. So it's like that's time. Wait, Jonesy, are you running prep?
I guess I'll take prep. Can you call me?
Yeah, I'll call you. Are you picking up?
Yeah, I picked up. Can you hear me on call? Danny.
Yeah, I can hear you. Never mind, I can't hear you. It's not saying anything. I'll just call you.
Hello?
That was like 25 used.
So starting an innovation. Is anyone not ready? On the uniqueness of Me Too drugs being bad, 2 responses. First, Me Too drugs boost access because Hollis 14 writes that by increasing competition, each Me Too drug decreases market prices by 2%. Second, Me Too drugs aren't copied. Aronson 20 explains that during the chemical research process, drug companies screen multiple different structurally related groups at the same time to streamline R&D efficiency because it's so risky and such a low chance that anyone works. If they screen multiple different chemically related structures, there's probably a higher percentage that can get more drugs out of the bat. That's why Aronson continues that getting rid of Me Too drugs doesn't force companies to boost innovation. It just makes R&D costs less efficient because they increase the amount that companies spend per drug. The way it works is just that out of each chemically similar structure of batches that they test, the one that exits clinical testing first becomes a novel drug. The ones that are come out of clinical testing later then become the Me Too drugs, which means that companies are already trying to be innovative. Then onto their link about the United States not being like a third response. Conifer 17 explains that US R&D already accounts for over half of new drugs globally, with 90% of this coming from the private sector. This is only rising as Gottlieb 19 explains that R&D spending increased 32% in the last 5 years. Single payer destroys success in 2 ways. Number 1, it's profit. It decreases return on drugs through price controls. And number 2, it scares away investors because they know their returns are always going to be capped. Ultimately, Easton 18 quantifies that by capping drug prices, you lower R&D by 80%, and the IPI finds that in the status quo, new vaccines save 10 million lives per year. R&D is obviously working right now, specifically on value-based pricing. Even if the US had the mechanisms to determine the value of drugs, the value assigned is never going to be agreed upon because the IMD in 2020 writes that 79% of value-based pricing researchers find that assigned prices are very inaccurate. This has two implications. Number one, companies back out of innovation because they can't get a profit on drugs if the drug pricing can never be decided, but second of all, companies lobby more to change the value-based pricing system, which already takes money away from innovation. On to their second intention on boosting the economy. There's two overall responses. First, the CRFB in 2019 estimates that Medicare for All costs $3 trillion per year. They further that aggressive taxation still falls short of 60% of required spending, meaning that taking on debt is the only other option. Romer 20 writes that this debt growth skyrockets interest payments on US treasuries, which in turn crowd out other areas of spending, nearly doubling our current debt guarantees that we physically will run out of money to pay for Medicare for All. There's two implications. Number one is defense, because all of their advocacy is inherently short-term because Medicare for All is inevitably crowded out by interest payments. But second is offense, because after Medicare for All collapses, there's no social safety net, there's no other remaining insurance program, which means that no American has insurance. It's a case turn on their entire case. The second overall response is that when you have Medicare for All, it actually crashes stocks. That's Drupal 17 explains that low risk and high return on private healthcare industry stocks attract many investors, but Medicare for All is going to collapse the stock market in three ways. Number one is replacement. Yates 18 explains that deleting the private industry market liquidates trillions in stocks and bonds, which crashes people's savings and crushes consumer spending. Second is an investor scare, because private healthcare is such a large part of the stock market. Richard 18 explains the perception of implementing Medicare for All freaks out investors and causes a financial meltdown. Third is pensions. Weinstein 17 explains expanding coverage by a law incentivizes a surge in early retirement because you no longer have to hit 65 to get Medicare, which overwhelms the pensions market. Beatsma 16 explains that this scares people into liquidating pensions assets out of fear of pension funds going bankrupt from demand, which crashes the stock market. Meow and 12 finds asset crashes lead to spiraling recessions due to bond liquidation and credit crunches, leading to persistent unemployment, economic stagnation, and the IMF says it pushes 900 million people into poverty. Onto their specific links. First on wages, first on people having more cash. That's not true. Feynman 16 explains that Medicare for All is so expensive it doubles income and corporate taxes, which results in wage deflation and massive unemployment, which is why Fishpond in 2019 explains that 75% of people actually lose more money on balance on taxes, which depresses middle income people's spending. Second on wages, two responses. Number one, corporate taxes increase, which means that companies make less money in their world, but second, companies are greedy, they aren't increasing wages, they want to maximize profit. On to small businesses, again, two responses. You can cross with corporate taxes, which tank small business profits, make it harder for them to enter the market. But second, small businesses are growing right now because America has a very good growth economy. There's a lot of easy access to investors, which means that they need to prove how much small business growth increases and how much it actually matters and context of their impact.
Okay, I'm gonna run some prep. Oh, in the meantime, was there evidence for the 75%?
Yeah.
Card? Which one?
You want me to send it?
Is it not in the case doc?
No, we don't read this. What do you mean?
It was the
Yeah. That 75% evidence.
Not the 75% lose money, the one in
Yeah,
the case.
just control of 75. I think it's there.
I did, and I didn't find it. I'll check again. Did you like just add it in?
He added a
Yeah, I looked at it wasn't cut in the actual card. So I added it.
Okay, thank you. Then I'm gonna start running some prep. Okay, pausing prep really quickly. Can I see evidence for like your second link in your first turn about how like Me Too's are really good for innovation?
Oh yeah, sure. I'm sending it on the email chain.
It might take a few seconds, but I'll let you know when we get it. I just got it. Yeah, I just got it. Okay.
Is there a specific part of this card that we can look at? It's like long.
I think it's just the first bolded part.
Okay.
And also the second to last bolded part. Like the large chunks.
Okay, that was a total of 45. So the order is going to be just a little bit whack. I'm going to start with frontlining, and then I'm going to move to their C2, then C3, and then I'm going to end on their C1. Is that good? I'll try to signpost as I'm going along. Alright, in that case, my time will start now. But start on their first turn where they say that Me Too's are really good because they boost access. We say A, that is just going to continue under our rule. They don't actually extend a warrant as to why Me Too's are going to be drastically hurt. Instead, we say that if the government really thinks it's necessary to make Me Too's even more accessible, then they can still do this because they have the power in terms of value-based pricing. Second, even if you think that it's going to increase innovation, innovation is not hurt by the value-based pricing system. If anything, since it's going to be evaluated by the government, this means that they're actually getting a good return when they're actually being innovative. With that, let's move on to their next turn. Group their two links on profit and investors. We'd say first, price controls are already non-unique. They were implemented by Trump literally as of yesterday. Second, VBP solves. The reason is because if you think that price controls are really bad, if you actually have a system instead that replaces it where the amount that they're getting back for the actual innovation level is proportionate to how much innovation that they have, then investors think this is a lot better, especially in comparison to the status quo where a lot of like the innovative companies can actually be outcompeted by the companies that are really good at marketing, which is why investors would always prefer the value-based pricing. Let's move on to debt. First, debt has no impact on interest rates. They don't actually termalize any kind of uniqueness on this. We say debt is rising no matter what. But second is that during the COVID pandemic, we still have interest rates at an all-time low. But finally, Barrett 18 gives the warrant, which is that the largest possible amount for interest costs to rise in the long run is 2% for the US, which is why Kogan writes that economic growth can outpace cost, indicating that we'll never have to cut spending later. This is why Conover 13 writes that whenever the Federal Reserve prints more money, it is buying back bonds, thus not increasing the total money supply, but simply liquidating assets, so interest rates never are actually impacted. They have no impact into this turn. But second, on stocks, you can just group their arguments. First, there is no actual correlation between pharma and the rest of the stock market because we'd say that during the COVID pandemic, there were 3 really big pharma stocks that plunged. However, the stock market has continued to rally back and forth. They don't give a warrant on this part. But second is that there is no correlation to the recession. There's a 2001 stock market crash. There was a 2018 stock market crash that was the worst in a decade, yet the economy was not actually very hurt, especially in the 2018 one. The economy was still going back and forth. Their final response is about how taxes are going to happen. They don't give any warrant on this. Outweigh on probability. A, a specific tax plan is not in both bills. B, zealous 17 writes that Republicans always choose to cut corporate taxes over increasing the deficit for other entitlement programs in the past. Same logic for the for income taxes. This link is supercharged because we say the Dems have to make concessions to pass such a large Medicare for all bill. Our narrative is clear. We say in the short term they can just do deficit financing. The 34 trillion is over 10 years, so in 1 year it's comparable to a COVID stimulus package that was just deficit financed. In the long term, turn it because Archer writes that by saving administrative costs, they're going to be saving $600 billion annually, so taxes and all of these costs all go down. Now, and their 75% evidence has no methodology. I've read it before. Instead, our evidence about 90% saving money takes taxes into account. Let's move on to their contention 2. First, it is completely contingent on revenue. However, Gron 17 writes that setting prescription drug prices 20% lower than the current list price would increase the number of users who can afford the drug by 23% and revenues only decrease by 1%. They have not actually given you a quantification as to how much revenues are going to be going down or how much profit or prices are actually going to be lowered. And finally, there is no actual good evidence for their implication. But either way, we say that they concede in Crossfire that the reason why they're actually continuing to give these lower prices in the developing world or in the emerging markets is because they can actually still make a profit. Another reason is Sukarn09 writes that Big Pharma can still actually have an incentive to donate or give better drugs or lower priced drugs because they get a tax write-off by donating. So even if you think they care about profit, this links in very clearly. But finally, Turnit Catlin 10 writes that when driven by cost concerns, pharmaceutical companies actually move their clinical testing and research facilities to emerging markets, which creates the long-term development of health infrastructure. On shortages, you can cross-apply the revenue argument, but second, they concede that there are a bunch of shortages in the status quo. They don't actually prove exactly how much worse it's going to get under our world, but instead we say if it's really necessary, the government can still try to subsidize all of these companies if they really think that these drugs need to be accessible to the rest of the people. They don't actually provide a bright line as to how much shortages are actually going to increase. With that, let's move on to their contention 1. There's absolutely no link. The Economist writes as of today that Biden's chances of winning the elections after analyzing 20,000 paths to the ballot is 92%. But second is that there's no reason why turnout goes down. There are a bunch of other political issues that people care about. For example, civil rights, the economy, the environment. There are no reasons why people only care about healthcare and are going to suddenly not vote anymore. But finally, on the impact, we're already stuck in a feedback loop. There's no actual stopping climate change, and they don't actually termalize exactly how much it's going to get worse. Thus, I affirm.
Wait, could we call some evidence?
Yeah, which one?
The 1% contingent on revenue, the tax write-off, cost concerns to move over.
Is the 1% the revenue doesn't go down?
Yeah.
And
You want
then
me to just type them in the chat?
that works too. I just missed you when you first said it. I'll start getting them. The second one you said was the tax write-off, right?
Yep.
Okay. Gosh. What is the third one? Oh, the turn. Okay.
We don't need the first one on a 1% decrease in revenue.
Oh, I already copy pasted it either way. The subsidized one wasn't analytic, but if you want to talk about it in cross, I'm willing to. I sent the first three, and then I'm just getting the last one.
I sent price controls yesterday.
Oh, are you guys running prep? Oh.
Oh wait, no, we didn't get the email yet. We're just waiting. We're not prepping.
Gotcha. I think both of them sent already. I got both.
Let me refresh. Okay, I see. Cool. Y'all can start cross.
Yeah, I got them too. Okay.
Your first question.
Let's talk about Trump's price controls yesterday. How many times has he tried to impose price controls through his 4-year term?
Why does it matter if it actually passed?
Because he's passed a lot of different price controls in the past, and they've all either got delayed, shot down in court, or like he just like gave up on them.
But we'd say at least your own link is about investor perception, right? So why does it matter?
Because the price controls didn't pass, like they've never worked before.
But
There's no prep.
own evidence tells me even just the perception of price controls should be enough to deter investment, right? Even if it's
what part of our investor confidence thing doesn't have to do with price controls?
Okay, fine. Then let's just talk about this. If there are price controls, won't investment or investors be kind of shook? They'd be kind of scared, right?
Yeah, but their investments aren't like capped yet. And once they realize the price controls aren't getting implemented like every other time, it's gonna come back up. So it's like even if there is an investor perception, it's only a short-term shock because the price controls themselves are never going to be permanent.
So just under Trump's administration, then?
No, I see that no other president, like no other like presidential nominee right now wants to run on price
So
controls.
on that note, then what was your warranting for your second link on your second turn on our case? Because you said investors are going to go down if we have a VBP.
Yeah, so argument is that even if Trump releases price controls and that causes an investor shock, investment's going to rebound because the price controls are never going to be implemented because for the past 4 years when he's passed price controls bills, they've never actually been followed through and implemented by the executive branch to actually decrease prices.
We'll just call this after. Do you have a question?
Okay. I just had a question.
Oh, okay. I don't particularly have one, but let's talk about taxes. So, what tax plan is specifically outlined in the bill?
You tell me there's no tax plan, but every single proposal that Canada has run on has mentioned wealth taxes, corporate taxes, payroll taxes, because all the people are interested in wealth redistribution. Bernie Sanders has conceded that taxes are going to increase if they trade off with premiums. And we see that trade off is going to be negative.
Okay, so what about like the House bill, like Jayapal's bill? Because there actually is no actual specific tax plan listed.
Yeah, but Jayapal's advocated that we're going to increase like wealth and corporate taxes.
Okay,
Like
well,
no person who has pitched a plan has advocated a like purely deficit finance plan.
the point about wealth and corporate taxes is just then, sure, if you have taxes on the wealthy and then the wealthy corporations, then there's no actual reverberating in I don't know how to say it.
Well, the corporations are the ones that hire the people, right?
Sorry, what'd you say?
The corporations are the ones that hire the people, right? So if they're losing profit, then people are losing
Not
wages.
like it's a flat tax for corporations.
What?
Richer corporations would get taxed more, don't you agree?
Yeah, but richer corporations are also the ones that employ a lot of people, like Walmart, for example. They employ like millions of employees across the United States, a lot of which are low income.
The point is that Walmart can deal with some taxes and still employ people because they're Walmart.
Yeah, but overall, the revenues are going to get hurt because of the tremendous increase in corporate taxes. That's time.
Okay, can we get one more piece of evidence? Like, I think it was your fourth response or first front line. It was like investors think value-based price controls are a lot better.
Wait, your
Danny, you cut out during the middle.
Oh, it was your fourth front line on your C1. It was like investors think value-based price controls are a lot better or something.
So part of the response is carded part is analytic. I'll just send the carded part.
Yeah, that's fine.
Wait, where did you send the no correlations between stock and healthcare industry card?
Was this asked for? Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I just noticed that you sent that. I can send those too. Okay, they've all been sent. Might take a few seconds.
We'll start prep when we get it, and we'll start the call.
Wait, can you tell us when the card's sent?
They already sent like
Okay, I got it.
not minutes, seconds.
Many seconds.
We'll start time then. Okay, that's a minute and 4.
Yeah. Cool. It's going to start at the top of their case, then go down to, just go down their case and then our C3, and I'll signpost. Is everyone good? Conceded turn on their first contention. Even if the U.S. has mechanisms to determine the value of drugs, the value assigned would never be agreed upon, as IMD 20 was 79% of value-based price controls. Researchers find that assigned prices are very inaccurate. There are two implications they both concede. Number one, it forces companies to back out of innovation, but number two, it makes companies to pay more money, lobby to change the value-based pricing system, taking more money away from innovation. We are the link into innovation. But then on their C2, extend the Struble evidence, which tells that low risk and high return in the private health industry attracts many investors. Because of this, Medicare for All collapses the stock market in two ways. First, the replacement. Extend Abelson tells you that deleting the private insurance market liquidates trillions in stocks and bonds, crashes people saving consumer spending. And then second is pensions. Extend Wetson, who tells you that expanding coverage by law would incentivize a surge in early retirement, which would overwhelm the pensions market. Basement tells you that this would scare people into liquidating pension assets out of fear. Pension funds going bankrupt from demand crashing the stock market. This links goes conceded. Extend the Mao evidence, which tells you that asset crashes lead to spiraling recession due to bond liquidation in credit countries. IMF tells you this pushes 900 million people into poverty. They give a couple responses. Number one, they see how there's no correlation. But first of all, there's this talking about like pharma stocks, not insurance. Second of all, the healthcare industry is the largest part of the economy, which means that A, small shocks don't affect it, but B, it's the largest shock. But then they tell you how like the economy went back and forth. Number one, other parts of the economy don't affect healthcare because it's the like largest shock overall. But then also all the empirics don't matter because A, they're short term, but B, they've been reversed. There's no plan to actually put private insurance back, and it's very long term. On wages, you can also extend the corporate tax difference that goes conceded. Collier 18 tells you that corporate taxes tank business profits, which decreases wages overall. Also, on the stock market impact, this links into all their offers on the economy because you're pushing it down even further with a greater magnitude because you're literally collapsing the entire stock market, but also affecting innovation because it means that people like investors are pulling out of the healthcare industry as a whole. No one will be investing. Let's go on to our case on our C3. We're going to be extending this. Extend Hirashi, who tells you that price controls would make profit margins for generic drug companies basically negligible, as they would have to cut prices to remain competitive. Extend Sullivan, who writes that this would induce numerous drug companies to exit the market. This would collapse drug supply, as Weingarten tells you that generic drug manufacturers account for 90% of America's drug supply. The impact is a global collapse of drug access. Extend Kogan, who tells you the complex nature of the global drug supply chains make them particularly vulnerable to disruption. And due to the number of small competitors at each stage of the supply chain, Narwhal tells you that a market exit from a major component will cause the entire chain to collapse. O'Leary tells you that supply chains are already at the brink because of Corona. A market failure in the U.S. would be a catastrophe, and you can extend Snyder tells you that antibiotics have led to astronomical declines in deaths from lethal diseases, and access to antibiotics continue to save tens of millions of lives worldwide each year. They give you two responses. First, they say there's shortages in status quo, but number one, they're individual shortages, not a massive exit. Then they say how the government can still subsidize. Number one, they can try to subsidize, but no one's actually going to fill in for them because it's a 90% of the manufacturers go away. But second of all, the FDA legally cannot subsidize it. This is going to be linking to the economy because when you increase the overall health in the majority of the world, you're increasing your economic growth, which in turn Scheller tells you leads to an increase in export markets for the majority of the world, with a 1% increase in majority nation economic growth, growing the U.S. economy by 0.6%.
I cut out in a few places.
So, really quickly for the end, because that's where I cut out the most, can you send the evidence for your economic and weighing, like your link into economic growth?
And also that the FDA can't legally subsidize.
Thank you.
Can you get the second part they told?
Which one?
About like FDA cannot legally do anything, and I'll send the export market thing. I think they were talking about.
Also, the evidence for how M4A is going to crash the entire stock market.
On both the links.
I sent the export market link to the end.
I haven't gotten them yet, but I will let you know.
So I'm sending FD and stock market crash, right?
Yeah.
Do you want me to send both the links for stock market or just one of them?
Wait, y'all are muted.
Where a crash in healthcare means crash in the rest of the stock market. If it is both, then you can send both. Oh, I got Danny's email. That
Me?
was sorry. That was my
Can we see that there will be price controls on generics?
Oh, yeah. It's not there's price controls in generics. It's that generics are forced to undercut brand name drugs, and thus they're forced to lower their prices via the market.
I think the link you extend was PC, but that's fine. That's fine.
You still want the link evidence?
Do you still want Jen?
Sure.
Okay.
It's going to start on our first contention. On our first contention about innovation, remember there are already price controls being implemented in the status quo, but specifically on the value-based pricing. We outweigh on probability. Historically, when value-based pricing was instituted in other countries, for example, Germany, there was actually an increase in innovation and an increase in access. None of their impacts manifested. They give you really, really bad warranting for how this happens in summary. But specifically on our second contention about the economy, this is really, really clean. We say that U.S. economic growth is slowing in the status quo, framing changes as by freeing up cash. This is because 90% of households are going to save $4,400 every single year. This is going to be really important because they're going to spend that money back into the economy, and their main response is that there's going to be an increase in taxes. Karina gives you really, really good probability weighing. We outweigh in probability that there's not going to be taxes in two ways. The first is there's not a specific tax plan in the bill, but second is more important, is that Republicans oppose taxes in order to win re-election. They're never going to increase taxes, which is why you're going to do deficit spending. But specifically on their turnabout stocks, this is really, really terribly contextualized. They never respond to Karina's probability weighing. We say that historically in the 2018 stock market crash, the stock market crashed terribly, but there's no impact on the economy. He barely does any warranting. He just says a bunch of economic terms that nobody can understand. He does no warranting for our probability analysis. But overall, we say that when you decrease healthcare costs, GDP is going to increase by 8% over the next decade. But that's going to be really clean because we say this economic growth spills over to other countries and it's going to decrease poverty in America by 20%. This is where we outweigh. We outweigh in the long term because we say when you can develop the pharmaceutical industries of other countries by themselves, they can be independent and they don't have to rely on the United States, which is a lot better because the US is not actually that sustainable and pharma companies are not actually that great in America. But then specifically, let's go to their case. First, we say that they drop a really huge turn that basically loses them the round. On price concessions, we say that pharmaceutical companies are going to go to other nations to develop infrastructure and medical infrastructure there. But that's going to be really important because of the long-term weighing that we give you. They only say, oh, we're going to, like drug shortages spill over to other countries. He does terrible warranting. There's literally no warranting. He just asserts a bunch of things, but we actually give you the warranting. We say that when prices increase in the United States, when prices decrease in the United States, then revenue could potentially decrease, which is why they have the incentive to go to other countries to develop their own infrastructure because it increases their profits because costs are lower in these other countries. But that means there's actually long-term sustainability. But specifically on their shortages argument, few responses. First, he definitely extends price controls as the warrant in summary, but we say this is non-unique because Trump is trying to pass this anyways. And specifically, we say that if it was going to cause 90% of drugs to just not exist anymore, the government would never allow that to happen. It just doesn't make any sense. Like the government is going to be like, oh, we don't need 90% of drugs anymore. There's absolutely no probability on this argument. But specifically, an increase in economic growth for their argument has no warrant. He just really blithely tries to impact like shortages to economic growth, but I don't think anybody understood what happened there. But we give you very clear contextualization. Where there's an increase in economic growth in America, there are going to be more trade relations with other countries. You're going to build more pharmaceutical and infrastructure there, which is why you're going to be creating more economic growth in those nations, and they literally have no evidence to support this. But secondly, we outweigh on scope. We say that economic growth helps people in all aspects of lives. They only impact the healthcare industry. We're impacting things like workplace and the education. That means we're increasing growth and increasing the quality of life overall. They only impact the medical aspect.
Are you ready for going cross? Hello?
Yeah.
You guys have first question.
So your turn on our case, it's contingent on revenue, right? Revenue going down.
Yeah, isn't your offense contingent on revenue going down?
Oh, no, I was just asking.
Yeah, okay.
Do I have a question?
Sure. So, when was the last time that a stock market crash led to a recession?
Oh wait, but our
Wait.
front line is
Wait.
that
Low.
What?
That was like a housing bubble, was it not?
I mean the stock market contributes to the recession. But
Well,
our uniqueness is
It
that
was a
specifically
housing
the
bubble, right?
wait, our uniqueness is that the healthcare sector specifically is number 1/6 of the GDP. It's the largest industry in the United States. But secondly, it's specifically for middle income people. It's like a large part of their assets because it's a very stable industry because insurance is an inelastic good.
So, what does this have to do with the rest of the stock market and a recession?
Which means that even if like part of the stock market crashes, you're still depressing consumer spending because people are losing all their assets, specifically middle income people, because they thought it was a safe asset, which is why they invested in it.
Okay. Do you have a question?
Annie, do you have a question?
Not really. Wait, can we talk about the price controls that Trump imposed yesterday?
Yeah.
So like, what are the details of these price controls? Like
First
this,
first of all, this was clean conceded. We can talk about it in Grand Cross, but don't make a new comments in Grand Cross, please. So, what was your question? Wait,
Yeah,
you're
no,
on.
hear you.
how's Trump like dealing with it? Like just telling them to lower prices or what?
Well, he implemented the
Executive order for pharmaceutical companies to lower drug prices.
So they have no choice.
That is indeed how
negotiation
government.
process.
Oh, so they don't have like a month to repeal it or something?
Yanni,
Yeah,
you know,
I just want
it
to
would
talk
be
about that.
great if this response was made earlier, but we would say that
Oh no, I
especially
just want to
right
talk about this, you
now,
know?
I can give you the
I
exact
know you have
reason
to
why
talk
these
about it.
price controls are going to pass. And it's because it's right before Trump's reelection. So he's going to do everything he can to pass these price controls because it's his last ditch effort to win the election. We good? Do you have a
Yep.
question?
That was my question.
Okay, let's see. Karina, do you have a question?
Okay, relax. All right. Let's talk about shortages.
Oh, I get it. We're good. Okay. Unless you have a question, Karina.
Oh no, I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay. So typically, do middle income Americans who invest and have the educational background to invest in the stock market, are they the people who really spend the most money, or do they also save a lot of money?
I mean, I'm assuming they spend a lot, right?
But I mean, like, they save more money than, for example, someone who is making a minimum wage and they have to spend all of their money back into the economy, right?
I mean, I would just say that people in the middle income are just making more overall. So even if they're investing a higher proportion of their income into savings, the total amount that they're investing into consumer spending is probably more than low income people.
Okay, well, that's cross. Either way. Cool.
Do we have any prep left?
I think like 30 something. It was like we used 20 before and then like a 140 for summary or something. And we used like 30 somewhere else. I can't do math though. Like I
Yeah,
literally
you can't
can't.
because that adds up to 3 minutes, Danny.
140 plus 20 plus 30.
Oh, I mean, okay.
We can call.
Okay, I think I'm good. Starting on their turn on, I think it's like pharmaceutical outsourcing in our case. Is everyone ready? On this trend about lower pricing, forcing pharmaceutical companies to go to other countries, we'll concede that pricing controls happened yesterday, which is defense on this turn, which means you can't go for it. Let's talk about the economy. We're going to go for a return on stock markets. Drupal 17 explains because the low risk and high return on private healthcare stocks, it attracts many investors because Medicare for all classes of stock market in two ways are actually going to be hurting consumer spending. First is replacement. Abelson 17 explains that deleting the private insurance market liquidates trillions in stocks and bonds, crashing people's saving and crushing consumer spending. But second is pensions. This goes dropped. Webster 17 explains that expanding coverage by a lot incentivizes a surge in early retirement because people don't need to hit 65 to get Medicare, which overwhelms the pensions market. BS 16 explains that this scares people into liquidating their pensions assets out of fear of pension funds going bankrupt from demand, which again crashes the stock market. Meow and 12 finds. Asset crashes lead to spiraling recessions due to bond liquidation and credit crunches, leading to persistent unemployment, economic stagnation. The IMF says it leads 900 million people to go into poverty. This links into all their offense in the economy because if you are literally liquidating all your assets, it doesn't mean that people are saving on healthcare because their assets just got destroyed, which means that obviously you have to spend back on that, which means that it checks back on like all their consumer spending offense. But Specifically, they would be like two pieces of defense. Number one, they say that the market already crashed. They ignore the uniqueness. Number one, the middle class invests in health insurance stocks because it's very stable because it's inelastic good. But second of all, healthcare is the largest industry in the economy. It's 1/6 of the economy, which means that even if other industries collapsed in the stock market, didn't have an impact, this one specifically will. Then they say they outweigh the long term. That's not true. When you have your assets devalued, it means they're permanently gone. It means they're permanently devalued. You're not going to get them back. But specifically, we're also going to extend a piece of defense on corporate taxes. We're going to say that when you have Medicare for all, it costs so much that corporate taxes increase, which depresses wages because now businesses have to pay more and can't pay their employees. They just say that there's no tax plan. Well, like literally everyone who has proposed a Medicare for all plan has never ever pushed for it to be totally funded with deficits. Everyone has actually proposed some sort of wealth tax or corporate tax. This in turn depresses the amount how much people can be paid, which is at best defense on their case, at worst for them it's offense.
Okay. I guess I'm just going to start on their turn to our case. Is anybody not ready? Okay, time starts now. In the end, their turn is not an area to vote off of. There are a couple of reasons. The first of which is because in the end, they haven't actually warranted why specifically this industry is going to be the collapse of the rest of the stock market. But the second one is specifically that how they concede that it's mainly the middle class and the wealthier people that are in the stock market. Our argument is about overall people saving money on net, especially the low income who are the ones that have the highest marginal propensity to consume and funnel the most money back into the economy. But finally, on the impact level, they have dropped the probability analysis. All they say is that it's unique because they're middle class people who have stocks. This is not unique to specifically right now. This was true in 2001. This was true in 2018. There were stock market crashes, and as Jen tells you, this did not lead to an economic decline or decline as they tried to say it was. I don't even think they extended an impact to a recession, but either way, even if you think that they're going to lead to a stock market crash, the thing is you didn't see people liquidating their assets. Even during the COVID stock market crash, they still didn't trigger this impact, and they don't actually give you a bright line to how much of a crash is going to trigger their impact. But either way, on the long-term analysis, by their own logic, a recession is recoverable, which means that it's actually better if you're going to be saving money on net in the long term. With that, our link is completely conceded because in the end, they extend this taxes argument straight through ink. Jen tells you, A, it's not in fiat. He's just like, oh, they like taxes. But B, we say specifically the Republicans have always decided to prefer to tax cuts over just deficit financing, which is why in the end, this is completely conceded is going to be deficit finance. There's no offense in terms of our link on taxes. But specifically, even if you think that there are taxes, they have dropped what Jen has told you, which is that even accounting for taxes, 90% of households are saving money or $4,400 every single year that they get to funnel back into the economy. This is the main driver of economic growth because consumer spending is the root cause of economic growth. With that, we say that this is much preferable to just like an argument about like how like their argument has so many link chains as to how it's going to cause a recession, and then they don't actually terminalize it or actually weigh it against our argument. We say that if you have a long-term increase in the GDP, which we say is going to be an 8% increase in the GDP plus poverty going down by 20%, this actually creates a positive cycle of economic growth indefinitely into the future, and it circumvents their link either way. So for these reasons, I am proud to affirm. Good round, guys.
Good round.
Hedge.
RM Hedge.